Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 811. I'm Tom Kegley, your host. Today, a little detour. We wrestle again with the idea of committees and responsibility and accountability. This is not really a moot point. In mid-2008, I wrote an article called Responsibility Got Some? A riff on the old milk advertisement. So we're going to do a little detour, discuss the idea of diffusing responsibilities in committees, and then back on our summer road trip. We also have a visit from Susan Parente. Susan and I discuss certifications. Does having a bunch make sense, or does it reflect mass insanity? The answer is, like many things, it depends. Hey, learn to tame your work intake beast. Jeremy Willits and I are running 2 Mastering Work Intake cohorts over the next 3 months. The first one starts May 31st, very soon, and runs through June 28th. There are only a few seats left. If you want in, you need to get your name down. Link in the show notes. And then another on July 12th through July 26th. That's more of an asynchronous one. Look forward to seeing you at one of those 2. Jeremy Berrio, the evolutionary agilist, described Mastering Work Intake as a fantastic work, very practical, and helps improve workflows. Links in the show notes to buy a copy of the book and perhaps join our Mastering Work Intake cohort. A Detour by Thomas M. Cagley, Jr., Megan E. Cagley. When I published Accountability versus Responsibility, I did not anticipate being drawn back into the discussion of whether committees can be accountable and responsible. Over the past few weeks, I have observed several product meetings. In these meetings, consensus decisions were being made about releases, what they would contain, and a marketing approach. These were committee meetings. Is the committee accountable for the decisions, and to whom? It's not a moot point. In mid-2008, I wrote Responsibility. Got some? As I considered the topic of accountability and responsibility, I reread the piece and polished it a bit. It speaks to the idea of committees and the diffusion of responsibility. Responsibility Got Some? Reprised. 2024. Communities are built on a web of relationships and specifically identified responsibilities, a web that creates hierarchies within the community, boundaries around the community, and generates peer pressure and enforces behavior. Blurring the specificity of responsibility changes the dynamics of a community. The impacts of these changes aren't great on the surface. The problem is that who in the community accepts responsibility? Living and working in a community requires someone to be responsible. Communities can be a mean of dispersing the spotlight of responsibility. Communities require agreement and consensus, which can be used to distribute the responsibility for decisions. Distribution of responsibility can lead to diffuse accountability. What happens when managers use committees to diffuse responsibility for large process improvement initiatives? Most large process improvement initiatives, such as adopting business agility, are guided by steering and governance committees. These committees act as a nexus to focus the voice of the customer. Customers include management, developers, and anyone else who uses or contributes to work within your community. When the evil alter ego of these decision-making bodies rears its ugly head, these committees become tools to blunt and diffuse the responsibility for change. At this point, process improvement initiatives become trouble. Instead of removing barriers, the committee becomes a barrier. Committees can make sense as a gravity well to focus the requirement for change. This is not just an opinion. Formal improvement frameworks such as the CMMI use committees in various shades to provide governance and leadership. However, when leadership is replaced by consensus-driven management, committees become a tool to deflect responsibility. The deflection is a disservice to the organization and the individuals who see change as the path toward the future, rather than an end to an era. Does using committees to diffuse responsibility affect change initiatives more than other projects? One of the three requirements for change is a trigger to change immediately. Triggers are effective only when responsibility can be attached. Therefore, change can only happen effectively when responsibility and accountability are an integral part to the trigger. Are process improvement programs effective more dramatically when responsibilities are diffused? The answer is yes, because without accountability and responsibility, change will merely track with the wind. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to reach out to us at spamcastinfo@gmail.com or leave a message at 01440-668-5717. We look forward to the conversation. Susan Parente, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Great to be here, Tom, always.
Susan, you are one of my favorite conversations, and I love taping these. This is just fabulous. Matter of fact, I was eating breakfast this morning, shoveling the oatmeal in my mouth to knock down my cholesterol. I was mentioning to my wife that I was really looking forward to our conversation. Let's talk about, I don't know, you have like 8 billion of these. I only have, a couple hundred. Let's talk about certifications.
Yeah, it's a great topic. Truth be told, I have 15, 10 of which are Agile from 4 different certifying bodies. I don't recommend that people get like a Scrum Master certification from 4 different bodies, but I think that actually I have one for 3 different bodies, but it ends up being valuable that I got that because I'm able to help people figure out which one is right for them. They're not all alike. They're not administered the same. They're not equally easy to pass. They're not equal in price. So, but how I fell into that is I got one myself. Somebody offered one for free, so I took it. I'll always take a free training class. And then the third, a colleague of mine said, if you take this certification and get it, then you can teach these classes. Are you up for it? And pretty much my answer is always yes to yes, I will get a certification so I can teach it. So my situation's a little different than normal people. But yes, it's afforded me to be able to have a conversation about which Agile certification is right for me. And I think it's a really interesting topic. Some people think you don't need certifications at all. What are they for? Other people are very interested in certifications and would say, I'd rather get a certification than get a master's degree or whatever. So, there's some conversation on that too.
Okay, so there are several threads in there that I'd like to pull on. Let's start with, which would you rather have, a certification or experience?
I personally would rather have experience, but I think that my clients would rather me have the certification because it's a objective assessment of my experience.
Is it? I have a couple of Scrum Master ones, and I remember the tests, and, I could take the class and take the test, even with the hardest one of the bunch, right? The software, the SAFE certification, the SBC certification, which is rough. I don't think that I can guarantee you the first time I took it, I didn't have any SAFE experience.
Yes, some certifications do have experience as part of it. All of the PMI ones that I'm aware of require some level of certification. I'm trying to think now if EASM I hope I got that one right. Sometimes I feel dyslexic with all the acronyms. I don't think I am though, but that's the discipline agile. So the discipline agile one, I don't know if that requires you to have experience, but the other ones do. I know the PMP does, the RMP, the ACP, which is the Agile Certified Practitioner. So they do require you to have experience. So here's the thing. So in reality, I'd rather have the experience than the certification. But I know that when I was younger, I wanted experience. And it's very funny to look back now because, like, in my 20s, I was like, it's funny people talk about like discrimination in the workplace and people say, oh, did you feel that as a woman engineer? Actually, no, I never felt that as a woman engineer, surprisingly, maybe, but I did feel age discrimination. I think there's a significant amount of age discrimination, especially in the engineering field, and it's probably because, oh, you young kid just out of college, you don't know how things work, right? So that exists in that field. In computer science, that does not exist. I feel like in computer science, the one that just got out of college knows the latest and greatest of things. And the older you are in computer science, it's like, oh, you're old. You used to code in Fortran or something. So anyway, I do think there's a little age discrimination in engineering, far more than gender discrimination that I ever experienced. And so certifications and education were a way for me to gain experience without having actual experience. Like that was kind of my thought, is that if I get education, then it'll count for more. That's what drove me to get my master's degree. I actually got my master's degree like well into like it early in my 20s, basically. I'm trying to think. I might have gotten it by I don't want to give a number because then you'll know my age. Anyway, but it was basically like about 2 years out of college. I went back
So
in for my
about 3 weeks
master's.
ago.
Thank you. That's very nice to say. But yeah, so I laugh about it now because now it's like, what's your experience? And I just put like 25 plus because I'm like, let's not count anymore. That's embarrassing
Yeah, I
to
hear
share,
you.
you know. So and that happened. And for those of you listening who are newer in your career, that happened in like an instant. Like it was incredible. In fact, I started my business in 2010, and I keep looking. I'm like, I've had my business for almost 15 years. Like, how did that happen? Like for some reason, time moves slowly in your 20s and it moves very fast in your 30s and 40s. Like I barely remember them. So, it's just, yeah, yeah. It's just how things go. And so for me, getting those certifications was like it bolstered my career. And even if you're in your 40s, I mean, I'm working on a certification right now. This certification I need to get because it helps me to renew my other ones. So Scrum Study has, if you get a certification, it sort of renews your other certifications. So it's an interesting addiction they tried to create there to getting their certs. But the other option is to retake tests, and I have like 6 certifications through them because I teach Scrum Study classes. One of the things I like about Scrum Study, I'll put a plug in for this. They have a phone app so you can watch the videos on your phone. So literally when I'm walking the dog or doing whatever, I can watch these videos. When I make a cup of coffee later, I'll probably turn one on, and they're like 3-minute videos. So like you literally have time to watch one of them in between things. So that's kind of neat.
That
I
is
like
neat.
their material. Yeah, they've done an excellent job with their material. The problem with Scrum Studies is not as well known as like Scrum Alliance. Everybody knows Scrum Alliance. Everybody looks for that CSM certification on the resume. And actually, one of my recommendations is that if you don't get the Scrum Alliance certification, if you get, for example, the Scrum Study one, which is called the SCM, Scrum Certified or something like that. They jumble the letters around because they can't use CSM. So what I recommend is if you get one that is not CSM, to put in parentheses next to it equivalent to the CSM. The reason being that the search engines at HR, recruiting, or whomever's looking at it may not know that your Scrum Master certification is equivalent to the CSM, they don't care if it's equivalent. They're fine with that, but they just might not see it on your resume if you don't put something like that on
Or they
there.
might see you as dyslexic.
They might see you as dyslexic, which is okay. That's actually fine. But it's worse if they just didn't know that you did it at all. The other thing I've seen people do is if they're preparing to take the PMP cert, they can say something like PMP certification in progress or something like that, so that they don't get removed from the search. Because there are some places who, like, if you told them, yep, I'm set to go, I'm taking it in a month or whatever, where they might hire you contingently upon it. So it's a little bit of a trick if you're in progress with things and something's required. Um, Let me answer the question of how do you know which cert to get? And what I say is look at your ideal job, the one that you really, really want, and what does it require and recommend. So as far as what drives you, it's going to be different than what drives me. I'm usually driven to get certs so that I can teach those classes. Sometimes I'm driven to get certs to learn things. Like, for example, I'm working on getting my safe certification, and it was basically because I wanted to learn safe because some of my clients are using it. So I actually haven't taken the exam yet, but I'm very glad I took the class because I actually learned a lot about safe. So sometimes it's not about getting the letters after your name, it's about learning the topic. But, in general, yeah, I'd personally rather have the experience, but sometimes you can't get the experience. You can't create it out of nowhere. It has to show up. And there's another conversation we should have sometime, is that how did I become an agile expert? It's a really interesting conversation because it literally was a decision. I decided I wanted to become an agile expert, and then I engrossed myself in it. And one of those ways that I did that was getting a boatload of certifications. The other was reading like an article every morning. But that would be a great conversation because I think people think that people like you and I, Tom, are like just born into being like agile gurus. And
You
it
weren't?
actually well, maybe you were, Tom, but I was not. I mean, it takes a fair amount of effort, and I mean that effort is fine if it's a labor of love, right? So hopefully, the thing that you're an expert in is something that you really love, and that's why you become an expert. But no, it's not. It's not like something that's gifted to you. I mean, I'm sure you've done a lot of work. You learned about agile, and you're like, this is cool, and then you just started consuming as much as you could, and once you get 10,000 hours, you're a mastery of it, right?
Yeah, well, that's the popular theory, right? But again, pop psychology, 10,000 hours thing. So arguably, certifications, you need them to teach. That makes a ton of sense. You need them to open doors. Okay, I can see that. That's how you get in the door and get the experience. Why are there 45,000 of them and they're all different?
Oh gosh.
And
Well,
again, that's that. I obviously
yeah.
45,000 might be hyperbole, may not be hyperbole.
There's an article I read one time. I think it was called The Circus of Certifications, and it literally is that. I was like, well named. And I actually wrote an article after reading the article that was somewhat akin to it, but a little bit different. And yeah, it's insane. So in project management, it's a PMP and that's it. I mean, there's Prince if you're in Europe, but that's basically the one. There is something called I'm at a loss of words today. It's a government certification in project management. You'd have to be in the government to even be able to get it, but fact PPM, I think, something like that. Anyway, it's but other than that, there really isn't anything. But in Agile, it is a circus. Okay, so why is it like that? Well, first of all, Agile's a little bit newer. It's not that new, like 1990s. So hopefully I'm not aging myself there. But yeah, it's not that new. But it's a little bit newer. It's people are jumping on the bandwagon. Everybody wants a piece of it. Even PMI, PMI jumped on the bandwagon of agile and has shifted a lot of things. They bought into discipline agile. They wanted to add that. And so I think that's why there's so many in agile and they're so crazy different. The good news is gives you a little bit of options, you know? So project management, you got to get the PMP. With Agile, you have some options. You have a few different certifying bodies. So I look at it in a positive way. It's like if you go to the grocery store, you know, you don't have to just buy Heinz ketchup, but there's a few different other kinds. There's like somebody makes an organic one, and you know, maybe somebody makes one with some spice in it or something, you know. In a way, it's better for the buyer, except that you need to be a little bit more informed of a buyer to figure out which one is right for you. I just think there's a lot of them because everybody's jumped on the bandwagon. Certifications make money for certifying bodies.
Okay, I think you just hit the nail on the head. And I'll once upon a lifetime ago, okay, twice once upon a lifetime ago, I was the head of a large international association, and we were a certifying body. And I can tell you that roughly 75% of our revenue came from certifications. And very frankly, we were addicted to it. If we didn't continue to, increase the number of people and change it so they had to retake it every X number of times, or, make sure that they re-upped, then our revenue went down. And if our revenue went down, the group that we hired to manage us would get cranky, and then we'd have contract issues. Arguably, I think this has become not about the health of the industry and not about the health of the knowledge side of the industry, but more of, well, can we make money on it? And that's the goal.
I mean, it is from the perspective of the certifying body, but what is the value to you? And I've had this conversation with a few people. I also teach at the university level, so it is a little challenging because I don't want to say something disparaging to either group and upset anybody, but there's always this, like, does it make sense for me to get a higher degree, to get my master's degree? If you're, before that, to get your undergraduate degree, does it make sense to get a certification instead? And I know people have done both. I work with a lot of people with computer science degrees and in IT. Computer science is one of those degrees that I think makes a lot of sense to go to college for. I think there are some degrees that you get in college that are not going to help you at all in the workplace, and I'm not going to disparage them, but I think there are some. I think for myself, I got a degree in engineering. I got my master's in engineering management, and I guarantee you I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have today if it wasn't for that. Some of that is I teach master's degree students, so in management. So I basically teach MBA students. My engineering degree in master's degree basically is equivalent to an MBA. It's like a techie MBA. So I'm very grateful for that. But I don't know that college is the answer for everybody. I think it depends on what you want to do. It depends on you as a person, what you're able to do, what you like to do. A lot of universities now are asynchronous learning, which does not work for everybody. I think you need to honor if you're not disciplined enough to do that. The same thing with certifications. I can tell somebody you can self-study, but if you know you're not disciplined to self-study, then I don't recommend that. Like, that's not going to work, right? And so I think that as adults, we need to know how we learn best and what's most effective for us. I would say even if you have a higher degree, if you're in technology, I think you need to continue to get certifications. And even if you don't want all the letters after your name, you should take classes so you can learn the topics. Like yourself, Tom. Like I didn't know you took SAFe, but probably just like me, you were exposed to it, and you're like, I need to learn this framework. So how do I do that? Well, I take a class. I mean, I guess you could read a book, but I know for me, I had an awesome instructor, a gentleman from Canada who does coaching and teaching, and he was fantastic. And for me, somebody with a ton of certifications, I've sat in certification classes and just taken notes on how the teacher teaches. Like there's nothing, I can't really learn about Scrum because I have multiple certifications in it, but I could take a Scrum class and I can learn about how to teach it. So there's always an opportunity to learn.
That's fair. By the way, with the SAFe stuff, and well, at least a half of my certs, if you didn't take the class, you couldn't take the test. One was predicated on the other. So you couldn't just go read a book. You couldn't just go get experience. That was the several $1,000s was a bar. So therefore, unless an organization would pay for it, and luckily mine would at the time, unless an organization would pay for it or you had deep pockets, it was barred from you. That was not a possibility. But in general, certifications, a good or a bad thing?
I'd say they're a good thing, but buyer beware. Like, be careful what you're buying, and know that. The other thing is, if you do work for an organization that pays for them, you could even ask, can I use working hours? In some cases you can do that. I'm in the federal contract space, so usually you can only do that if it's relevant to your role. But I would ask the question, because if somebody's gonna pay you to study and pay you to take a class, I don't know why you wouldn't take that. To me, that's like matching 401k. I don't know why anybody would not take that. It's like leaving money on the table.
Well, money, it's certainly leaving knowledge on the table.
Yes. So, I mean, somebody offers me a free class, I take it. So, same thing with webinars. I think we're in an industry where you need to constantly learn. You don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money doing it, but I do think there's a need for that. Everybody's talking about AI now, and what does this mean to me? And I would say, I don't know if there's a certification out about it, but you should.
There are at least a dozen already.
Or dozen already. There you go. So, I do not have one, but you should at least be in webinars and learning about this stuff, because it's coming. It's actually already here. And if you don't know what it is or how it's going to affect the work you do, then that's going to impact you. So I think that the industry we're in, you need to stay on top of things. So I do think certifications are important, but I don't think that means a ton of money. I think there's ways around that, and that's.
I think learning is absolutely important. And by the way, if you have Windows, more than likely down in the bottom right corner, you have this new little icon that says Copilot in Windows preview mode. That's AI.
Yep.
So, and it's watching what you're doing on your screen and learning you. I don't think you can opt in or opt out. So just saying. Susan, how would people continue the conversation?
Find me on LinkedIn or send me an email. Email is Parente, Parente, at S as in Sam, the number 3 -tec.com. If you look for me in LinkedIn, it'll say I'm in the DC area. I do work in the DC area in New York, and I live in Delaware. But that's how you find me on LinkedIn. And please do, if you're interested in the topic of certifications, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can also send you the article I wrote on all the different Agile certifications to help you figure out which one is right for you.
Again, thank you, Susan. And until next month.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
In Reread Saturday News, we begin the meat of our reread of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Still working on that book, Flow, with Chapter 1, Happiness. The author highlights that happiness requires an individual perspective, stating, "The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile." Read Chapter 1 and discuss. Link in the show notes to this week's and all previous weeks' installments of the Reread of Flow. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast number 812, we'll feature our interview with Brad Mickley, founder and CEO of Jozu, on the topic of machine language operations, MLOps, and why Agile is integral to getting work done. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?